So what if the key to making a $20,000 highly clinical Western IVF cycle actually work is literally just a strategically placed needle and a 2,000-year-old root?
Right. It sounds almost counterintuitive when you put it like that.
It really does. I mean, if you or someone you love has ever navigated the world of fertility treatments, you know how incredibly mechanized the whole process becomes.
Mhm.
It's like suddenly your entire reality is governed by tracking follicle sizes on ultrasound monitors and hyper-analyzing hormone assays and just dealing with a very cold clinical vocabulary.
Yeah, the focus in that environment really narrows down to raw mechanics. And to be fair, Western reproductive endocrinology is exceptional at those mechanics.
Oh, absolutely.
Extracting eggs, fertilizing them in a lab, transferring embryos, they are amazing at that. But the intense focus on the biological hardware, it often leaves the rest of the patient's physical and psychological ecosystem completely ignored.
Which brings us to a really fascinating disruption of that purely mechanical view. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, our deep dive takes us right into the materials and methodology of the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness.
Yeah, a very interesting place.
It's a pioneering clinic located in Midtown East Manhattan. And we are pulling from a big stack of sources today. We've got their service menus, detailed pricing structures, patient testimonials, and a rather surprising list of medical endorsements.
The endorsements are really what stand out when you first look at the material.
For sure. So the mission for today's deep dive is to understand exactly how this clinic is actively blending cutting-edge Western reproductive medicine with ancient Eastern therapies.
Because looking at the sheer volume of material they've published, the immediate tension is just so obvious.
Oh yeah, placing acupuncture and herbal medicine in the exact same sentence as IVF and embryo transfers, I mean, that triggers a natural skepticism for anyone trained to respect the scientific method. Completely. The immediate assumption is that we are talking about an expensive spa day, right? You picture some nice meditation music, maybe some aromatherapy, and you have to wonder if there is any rigorous peer-reviewed science actually bridging these two vastly different medical paradigms.
Right, but we are going to look specifically at the clinical outcomes and the biological mechanisms that bridge that gap. We're exploring what happens when these two paradigms stop competing and start operating symbiotically to treat the entire patient.
Right, not just the reproductive organs in isolation.
Exactly, treating the entire vascular, endocrine, and nervous system.
So to understand how that synthesis happened at this specific clinic, we have to look at the founder, Mike Berkeley. And his origin story entirely upends the stereotype of a holistic healer.
It really does.
He didn't start out like meditating on a mountain. He was actually a highly skeptical, incredibly frustrated patient himself.
The sources outline a very grueling personal fertility struggle for Mike and his wife, Nancy. They had been trying to start a family for an extended period and were just failing repeatedly.
Which is so heartbreaking.
It is. And when they finally submitted to comprehensive clinical testing, they received a devastating dual diagnosis. Mike presented with poor morphology and poor motility.
Okay, let's break that down for people who might not know.
Sure. So morphology refers to the actual physical shape of the sperm. If the head is misshapen, it physically cannot penetrate the outer layer of an egg.
Right.
And motility means the sperm lack the forward propulsion necessary to even make the journey in the first place.
And then on top of that, Nancy was diagnosed with anti-sperm antibodies.
Yeah, which is a massive hurdle.
For anyone unfamiliar with that term, it basically means Nancy's immune system was literally misidentifying Mike's sperm as a dangerous foreign pathogen.
Yeah.
Like a virus or a bacteria.
Her body was actively deploying white blood cells to attack and destroy them before fertilization could even be attempted.
Faced with those compounded biological barriers, Mike maintained a strict reliance on Western medical intervention. He had absolutely zero belief in acupuncture at this point.
None at all. But Nancy, however, sought treatment from an acupuncturist and herbalist. And after experiencing her own biological shifts, she eventually persuaded a very reluctant Mike to undergo treatment as well.
And the outcome documented in their history is just striking. 3 months after they both began consistent Eastern medical treatments, Nancy conceived naturally.
Naturally, yeah.
They now have a 29-year-old son.
That singular event completely dismantled his previous worldview. He literally spent the next 4 years completing acupuncture school, immediately followed by another 2 years of intensive study in traditional herbal medicine.
That is quite the pivot.
It is. And for the last 27 years, he has dedicated his entire clinical practice to fertility, becoming the very first acupuncturist in the United States to specialize exclusively in this highly complex field.
See, I hear a story like that, and I am amazed by the career pivot. But let's look at this critically for a second.
Sure.
A great personal success story gives a practitioner profound empathy for their patients, obviously. But does a personal anecdote automatically translate into being a medical pioneer? I mean, we see a lot of people in the wellness space who have one good experience with a fringe treatment, they make it their entire personality, and start charging for it without ever actually advancing the underlying science.
That's a very fair point. What's fascinating here is the deliberate path Mike took to avoid becoming just another wellness guru relying on a single anecdote.
How so?
He recognized early on that operating in a strict Eastern medicine silo just wouldn't effectively serve modern patients, so he dedicated himself to studying Western reproductive endocrinology.
He actually learned the Western science side of it.
Exactly. He needed to understand the microscopic cellular why behind the treatments, and that rigorous self-education fundamentally changed how the traditional medical community views his practice.
The endorsements from prominent Western medical doctors in these sources highlight that shift perfectly.
They really do.
Like, Dr. Joe Massey specifically notes that Mike takes patient medical histories in the strict mode of Western medicine. He isn't asking abstract questions about energy fields. He's analyzing lab results and working in direct concert with reproductive endocrinologists, the REIs.
Yeah, and Dr. Paul Magarelli, another prominent figure in the field, openly praises Mike's profound grasp of both traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine.
Right, he mentioned endometriosis, didn't he?
He did. He highlights Mike's specific efficacy when dealing with incredibly complex inflammatory conditions like endometriosis, where the Western surgical approach often needs that Eastern anti-inflammatory support to prevent the condition from rapidly returning.
Then you have Dr. David Hoffman stating on the record that Mike probably reads more current medical literature than most active REIs currently in practice.
Which is high praise from an MD.
Seriously. Mike even helped form a separate, specialized board within the American Society of Acupuncturists to officially certify practitioners in reproductive endocrinology and infertility.
And creating a specialized certification board is a massive structural bridge. It forces an ancient practice to standardize its knowledge base against modern, empirical biological science.
So rather than competing, it sounds like he's acting as a bilingual translator.
Yeah.
He speaks the highly technical language of follicles, luteinizing hormones, and endocrinology to the Western doctors. And then he translates that protocol into the language of vascular networks, inflammation reduction, and blood flow for the patient's body.
That's a great way to put it. Applying a fresh lens to this dynamic, we can view Western medicine as the act of planting the seed.
Okay, planting the seed.
Right. An IVF cycle extracts the egg, creates the embryo, and physically places it in the uterus. Eastern medicine is the practice of optimizing the soil.
Optimizing the soil, I like that.
It adjusts the physiological environment, like the vascular blood flow, the inflammatory markers, the immune response. It's determining whether that medically planted seed actually has the environment required to take root and grow.
Let's dig into the actual tools he's using to optimize that soil. Because looking at the service menu for this Midtown East clinic, the methodologies go way beyond what you might expect.
They do.
I mean, I see acupuncture and herbs, obviously, but there are some highly technical interventions here, too.
The clinical toolkit is highly targeted. Starting with acupuncture, the fundamental biological mechanism isn't magic. It is vasodilation.
Opening the blood vessels.
Exactly. The strategic placement of needles stimulates the central nervous system to increase localized blood flow specifically to the ovaries and the uterus.
And what does that extra blood flow actually do?
That increased vascularity delivers more oxygen and more nutrients to the developing follicles while simultaneously helping to regulate specific reproductive hormones like follicle-stimulating hormone, or FSH, and anti-Müllerian hormone, or AMH.
Okay, and the source material draws really sharp distinction between how the needles work versus the herbal medicine.
Yes, it's a two-pronged approach.
They custom create herbal formulas for every single patient. The text explains that acupuncture works from the outside in, utilizing the nervous system, while the herbs work from the inside out, specifically targeting oxidative stress to boost mitochondrial efficiency.
Right, and oxidative stress is essentially cellular rust.
Cellular rust, that's a vivid image.
As we age, or as we encounter environmental toxins, reactive oxygen species, or free radicals begin to damage the DNA inside our cells, including our eggs and sperm.
Right.
The customized herbs act as potent, concentrated antioxidants that literally neutralize that rust. By repairing the cellular environment, they support the mitochondria, which are the biological engines responsible for generating the energy an egg needs to successfully divide and grow into an embryo.
I'm looking at another treatment on their menu, and I really need you to explain this one. They heavily feature something called low-level light therapy, or LLLT.
Yes, LLOT.
They refer to it as a tool for follicular energy enhancement. What exactly is happening when they shine a light on a patient for fertility?
This relies on a process called photobiomodulation. The clinic utilizes specific wavelengths of red and near-infrared light that are actually capable of penetrating the skin and soft tissue.
Penetrating all the way down to the reproductive organs.
Yes. Deep within our cells, the mitochondria contain a light-absorbing enzyme called cytochrome C oxidase. When the targeted light hits that enzyme, it triggers a massive boost in the production of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, which is the literal chemical energy currency of the body.
Okay, so more ATP means more energy.
Exactly. As reproductive cells age, their ATP production plummets. The light therapy physically forces the cells to generate more energy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If I'm visualizing this correctly, using low-level light therapy on aging reproductive cells is basically like retrofitting an older house with a massive solar panel array to completely boost its failing power grid.
That is a perfect analogy.
You are feeding the egg the literal raw energy it needs to mature properly before the Western doctors go in to retrieve it.
The biological logic aligns perfectly with that concept, but recharging that cellular battery takes time, which brings us to a strict biological rule governing the clinic's entire approach.
Right, the timeline.
The source materials frequently reference the timeline of cellular development. It takes approximately 3 full months, around 90 to 100 days, for an immature ovarian follicle to undergo the massive growth phase required to become a mature egg ready for ovulation or retrieval.
And it's the same for men.
Right, yes. The same 90-day cycle applies to spermatogenesis, the creation of new sperm.
So that 3-month biological runway dictates everything about how they structure a patient's care. You cannot just walk into the clinic 48 hours before your scheduled IVF egg retrieval and expect a few needles and some light therapy to fundamentally alter the cellular makeup of your follicles.
No, absolutely not. The required lead time is why the Berkeley Center has developed a comprehensive timeline of care that spans from early preconception planning all the way through to postpartum recovery.
The scope of that timeline is massive. For the preconception and assisted reproductive technology phase, meaning patients gearing up for an IUI or an IVF cycle, they offer highly specialized protocols.
They're very specialized.
Like they have a pre-embryo transfer acupuncture session priced at $250 and a post-embryo transfer session for $150, specifically designed to relax the uterus and prevent the cramping that can actually expel an embryo.
And then the strategy fundamentally shifts on day 91, or the moment a patient receives a positive pregnancy test. The goal transitions immediately from optimizing cellular energy to aggressive miscarriage prevention.
They adjust the protocol to treat patients twice weekly until they hit the 13th week of pregnancy. And the data point they cite to justify this timeline is just sobering. 90% of all miscarriages occur by or before week 12.
Yeah, the first trimester is highly volatile because the newly formed embryo is entirely reliant on the mother's corpus luteum to produce progesterone.
Oh, right.
Around week 12, the placenta finally takes over that hormone production, which stabilizes the pregnancy. The clinic's twice-weekly treatments aim to maintain optimal vascular blood flow and hormonal balance during that incredibly vulnerable transitional window.
And the protocols aren't solely focused on the female reproductive system either.
Not at all.
They dedicate significant resources to male factor infertility, addressing that exact morphology and motility issue Mike himself faced. I was looking at their packages, and they feature a 4-week Firestarter libido enhancement program.
Yes, the Firestarter program.
It combines 8 targeted acupuncture sessions with a custom herbal regimen designed to increase sexual function and stamina. and that's priced at $1,600.
Extending the timeline even further, they offer a comprehensive postpartum Get Well program. It includes 10 visits for $2,000, specifically engineered to combat the severe physical fatigue, the emotional crash of the baby blues, and the violent hormonal shifts that hit a body after childbirth.
Okay, wait. If we step back and look at this objectively, $1,600 for a libido package, $2,000 for a postpartum recovery program, ongoing twice-weekly sessions for miscarriage prevention. At a certain point, doesn't this start looking like an endless subscription model targeted at incredibly anxious patients?
That is a very valid concern.
I mean, in the vulnerable space of fertility struggles, people will throw their life savings at the wall, hoping something sticks. How do we know this isn't just a predatory upselling tactic?
Financial exploitation is a very real, very dangerous element of the broader fertility industry. However, the source material provides a compelling counter-narrative to that specific fear regarding this clinic. We really need to look at the documented experience of a patient named Jane A.
Oh, right, Jane. She successfully conceived and had been seeing Mike diligently all the way through her crucial 12-week mark.
Right. And having reached the safety of the second trimester, Jane experienced profound anxiety about stopping the treatments that had helped get her there. She explicitly requested, on multiple occasions, to continue paying for ongoing weekly sessions just to ensure a healthy pregnancy.
And Mike flat out refused to take her money.
He did.
He sat her down and explained that the empirical research simply does not support the idea that continued acupuncture visits make any statistical impact on pregnancy outcomes after the placenta takes over at week 12.
Exactly.
Jane's own review highlights her shock. She was a willing, paying customer begging to give a business more money, and the owner declined.
Turning down guaranteed revenue because it lacks clinical justification speaks volumes about a practitioner's underlying ethics. He adheres to the biological science, the 3-month cellular development rule, the first trimester of vulnerability window, rather than viewing his patients as permanent fixtures on a billing roster.
That transition from the clinical science to the literal out-of-pocket cost brings us to the human reality of this process. What does it actually feel like, and what does it actually cost to undergo this integrative approach?
It's an investment, certainly.
But the clinic is unusually transparent about its pricing structure online.
They are. An initial comprehensive consultation is $250, though they waive that fee entirely if a patient decides to purchase a treatment plan. Standard individual follow-up sessions are priced at $150.
Digging into their bulk packages, the comprehensive egg quality package, which covers the entire 13-week biological runway with 26 acupuncture sessions and 26 low-level light therapy sessions, is priced at $4,500.
It sounds like a massive number up front.
It does, but when you break the math down, it comes out to roughly $87 per visit. In the context of Manhattan medical care, that is a highly competitive rate.
Very competitive. And they also actively attempt to remove the geographical and logistical stress of receiving care. They provide telemedicine consultations for national and international patients at $350.
Which is great for accessibility.
Furthermore, they conduct home visits across all 5 boroughs of New York for $300 a visit. Removing the physical stress of navigating a Manhattan commute directly benefits the patient's nervous system.
There is a uniquely New York caveat to those home visits, though. The fine print notes that if you live outside of Manhattan, say in Brooklyn or Queens, you have to pay for the practitioner's Uber ride to your house and back.
Yeah, that is a very New York detail.
I absolutely love that logistical honesty. But beyond the pricing and the Ubers, the core narrative hidden in the patient testimonials reveals something far deeper than cellular energy and vascularity.
The reviews consistently point to a profound psychological intervention. Maka Oenesian detailed how her previous experiences at other acupuncture clinics felt sterile and detached.
Right.
With Mike, she experienced a practitioner who texted her back immediately, checked in after difficult doctor appointments, and functioned as a dedicated cheerleader.
Amanda Jadoin wrote about his unwavering optimism during her darkest moments. Patient Jane Mashosho described the clinic as a literal safe space where she could verbally unload every single fear stressing her out.
It becomes a sanctuary.
Audrey Reynolds went so far as to say Mike became her therapist, her coach, and her friend all rolled into one. So what does this all mean? For you listening, the true value of an integrative clinic like the Berkeley Center might be just as much psychological as it is physiological.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological environment in which a patient receives medical care physically alters how their internal biology operates.
How so?
Consider the review from Raisha Faisal. She astutely observed that in the standard high-volume IVF world, there is virtually no emphasis placed on the emotional quality of care. Patients frequently feel like they are just numbers on a spreadsheet.
You are rushed in for a blood draw, rushed to an ultrasound, and ushered out the door before you can even formulate a question.
Exactly, and the biological consequence of that environment is severe. When a patient feels like a number, facing the trauma of infertility, their body locks into a state of chronic fight or flight. Cortisol levels spike.
And high cortisol is bad news for fertility.
Very bad news. When cortisol is high, the body engages in something called the pregnenolone steal. It literally steals the chemical building blocks meant for reproductive hormones like progesterone and uses them to create more stress hormones instead. The body prioritizes immediate survival over reproduction.
Oh, wow. So the stress is literally stealing the hormones you need to get pregnant.
Precisely. But when a practitioner like Mike accommodates a last-minute Sunday embryo transfer so a patient isn't left terrified and alone, or when he simply texts them back to offer reassurance, he is actively downregulating their nervous system.
He is physically pulling them out of fight or flight and shifting them into a rest and digest state.
That psychological safety lowers cortisol, allowing the reproductive hormones to flow properly. The empathy itself is a medical intervention.
That is incredible.
It fundamentally alters the physiological landscape. The vascular system relaxes, inflammation drops, and the environment becomes vastly more receptive to the Western medical interventions being applied.
It really is a brilliant synthesis of two worlds. Let's briefly recap the journey we've taken through these materials today. We started by examining a profound personal struggle with infertility. Mike and Nancy Berkeley facing a seemingly insurmountable dual diagnosis.
Right, from that initial despair, Mike built a comprehensive, scientifically rigorous, integrative approach.
He developed a highly specific clinical toolkit, utilizing targeted acupuncture to increase vascular blood flow and hormone regulation. He prescribed customized herbal formulas to repair oxidative damage and cellular rust.
And he deployed low-level light therapy to physically force aging mitochondria to generate more ATP energy.
All of this is executed while working strictly hand-in-hand with Western reproductive endocrinologists. The Berkeley Center proves that patients do not have to choose between ancient Eastern wisdom and modern Western science. They are incredibly powerful when utilized together.
Most importantly, it demonstrates the profound clinical benefit of having a medical practitioner who treats the patient as a complex, emotionally nuanced human being rather than a broken reproductive machine in need of a quick mechanical fix.
Which is exactly the mission we set out to accomplish with this deep dive. Whether you are currently in the trenches of a fertility journey yourself, whether you are trying to understand how to best support a friend going through IVF, or whether you are simply fascinated by the evolution of medical science, understanding how to advocate for this no stones unturned approach to your healthcare is incredibly empowering.
It really is.
You do not ever have to settle for feeling like a generic number in a sterile waiting room.
You have the right to seek out medical options that deeply respect both your intricate biology and your fundamental humanity.
And that leaves us with a final, slightly provocative thought to explore on your own. We've spent this time analyzing how treating the emotional state of a patient, providing psychological safety, reducing their nervous system's stress response, and lowering their cortisol is literally just as critical to the physical outcome of a pregnancy as the pharmaceutical medications they're taking.
The clinical results of marrying profound human empathy with rigorous medical intervention are irrefutably documented throughout these sources.
If this deeply human, integrative approach works so successfully in the high-stakes, highly volatile, incredibly clinical world of reproductive endocrinology, shouldn't all modern medical specialties begin adopting this Eastern philosophy?
It's a great question.
Imagine what the future of standard healthcare might look like if every single medical discipline, from cardiovascular surgery to oncology to neurology, decided to start treating the whole person, the soil, and the seed, rather than just aggressively troubleshooting the immediate symptom. Because if we've learned anything for the Berkeley Center today, it's that your body is not a machine waiting for a mechanic. It's a complex, beautiful ecosystem waiting for the right environment to thrive.